Filtration is one of the main aspects that we need to consider while setting up our aquarium tanks, and although some nature aquariums and biotopes enthusiasts don't really use much filtration in their tanks, but most of us will need this, as we will see in this video. So, let's start with the different types of filtrations. There are mainly 3 types of filtrations that you will use in your tank. At least 2 of them will be needed in any aquarium tank. The filtration type that can be optional to some extent is called chemical filtration, where we add one or more chemical substance that alter and change the water composition. The widely used substance here would be the activated carbon, that pulls out from the water column the dissolved organic materials and neutralizes them so that it doesn't mix with the tank water. There are some other chemical substances that can be used in the chemical filtration. A good example would be the huge family of Seachem chemical filtration products like the ones in the picture, some of which are used as a generic chemical adsorbent, while others are used to get rid of specific things in the water like silicates and phosphates. I will be leaving links to these products in the video description. Of course, you can find other products for the chemical filtration from other aquarium companies. From my side, the products that I have used before belong to Seachem, and they were really very good. Any chemical substance used in the chemical filtration is exhausted throughout time, including the active carbon, so you will need to consult the manufacturer's instructions on when you will need to replace the used chemical substance, and if you dose your tank with this substance, then what should be the dosing frequency and the quantity. One other thing that you need to take into consideration when using chemical substances is whether they alter the pH level of your tank water or not. This should be mentioned in the manufacturer's instructions as well. The other 2 filtration types are mechanical and biological filtration. In mechanical filtration, we pass the water through some sponges or special filter pads, and these sponges and filter pads will remove any uneaten food, decayed plants, fish wastes, and other detritus that can be found in the tank water. Leaving these waste materials in the water can cause a lot of problems, and by time can change the water composition by introducing ammonia that is harmful to the fish. So collecting such waste matter through sponges and filter pads, then later clean these sponges and filter pads to get rid completely of this waste material, is probably a must-have in any tank. There are many shapes and sizes for filters that introduce mechanical filtration, and I will try to list most of them here. First, we have the famous sponge filter, which in most of the cases is a rounded sponge, where you add an air tube connected to an air pump. The air pushed into the sponge filter will pull water from the tank through the sponge, and hence any waste material suspended in the water column will get filtered by catching it in the sponge. You can easily find on Amazon or in your local fish shop sponge filters with several sizes. The same mechanism used in the sponge filter is also used in the Hamburg Matten Filter, which instead of using the traditional rounded sponge filter, uses a sponge sheet that can be added to the rear of the tank, or even in one of the corners. Behind this sheet we use an air tube that works in the same way like the sponge filter, by pulling water from the tank through the sponge sheet to catch any waste material in the water column. There is an alternative from the traditional sponge filter, like the one in the picture, where instead of the sponge we use a plastic or acrylic container, and inside the container you add a flat sponge or filter pad together with some filter media that we will talk about later in this video. This type of filter uses an air tube as well like the sponge filter. A more advanced alternative than these 2 types would be the internal filter, which instead of using air to pull out the waste it uses its own water pump, which is probably more efficient than using air. The power pump is attached to a plastic container, which we use to add the sponge or filter pads together with the filter media as well. Just note that in some cases the power pump might be very powerful, that it will generate a high water flow that might disturb your fish or plants, and in this case it is always advised to use a spray bar to distribute the output water across the tank surface. If you don't want to have the filter inside your tank, especially if you are using a small tank and want to use all the space for your fish and plants, then you can use the hang-on filter, which works in the same way like the internal filter. It has its own motor that pulls the water with any suspended waste from the tank into a special compartment that should contain the sponge or filter pad together with your filter media. The main difference here is that this hang-on filter, and as its name implies, can hang on the tank panel from the outside to save the tank space. Now, let's list some more advanced filters. I can mainly think of 2 advanced ones. The first would be the external canister filter, which is mainly a big container that can be made from plastic or stainless steel, and it usually comes equipped with water pumps to pull water from the tank, pass it over the sponge or filter pads inside the container, then another pump pushes the filtered water back to the tank. The second type of these advanced filters would be by using a sump filter, which is mainly a huge external container made of glass, plastic or acrylic, and we use a couple of pumps to pull water from the tank. Then after passing through several filtration stages inside the external tank, the water is pushed back to the tank after being cleaned. One final alternative from the external sump would be an internal sump, which works in the same way as the external one, but instead of using an external container, we use an internal container that we usually add to the rear of the tank or on one of the sides. The third type of filtration would be the biological filtration, where we make use of natural beneficial bacteria, mainly the Nitrosomonas bacteria and the Nitrobacter bacteria, to convert the ammonia that accumulates in the water column to nitrites, then later to nitrates. Any organic material that accumulates in the tank water will eventually change to ammonia, which can kill the fish. The Nitrosomonas bacteria converts the ammonia to nitrites, which is still harmful to the fish. So here comes the Nitrobacter bacteria, which converts the nitrites to nitrates, which is less harmful to the fish. Of course, after a certain time and based on each tank, you will need to make 20 to 30% water change to get rid of the excess nitrates that accumulates in the tank water. So we mentioned the filter media while discussing the mechanical filtration, and we also mentioned that we need to have beneficial bacteria for the biological filtration. So what is the relation between the bacteria and the filter media? In short, the filter media is the place where the beneficial bacteria resides. Actually, the beneficial bacteria can reside everywhere in the tank, on the gravel, on the plants, on the hardscape, and even on plastic toys and decorations that you add to the tank. The only place that might not have many bacteria would be the water column itself. So to make sure that we have enough places in the tank for as many beneficial bacteria as we can, then we use what we call the filter media, which can be plastic balls, ceramic rings, rough rocks like the lava rocks. The most common characteristic of all these filter medias would be they need to have a lot of surface area to capture as many bacteria as we can. This means that the filters used for the mechanical filtration, together with the sponges or filter pads, and the filter media are used for both the mechanical filtration and the biological filtration. In some cases, the filter itself can hold the chemical substance like the activated carbon, so we can use one filter that is utilized for the three filtration types: chemical, mechanical, and biological. There is one rule that you need to know while choosing your filter. The rule is mainly used to help you decide on the filter capacity for your tank. The chosen filter needs to have a capacity that is 8 to 10 times the volume of the aquarium tank. So if you have a 50-gallon tank, then your filter will need to be able to filter 400 to 500 gallons of water per hour. Until our next video, check out these videos that are talking about aquarium tanks and how to choose your tank, plus a case study about Mr. Clean who destroyed his nitrogen cycle. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the small bell for the notifications.